memory, that siege in World War II on Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, where more than 1 million people died. And that is the question this morning, I think, for the Kremlin. Not just a question of whether the Russian people saw what President Biden had to say, but whether they will see what is likely to be happening in the days and weeks ahead in Ukraine.
You know, Kira, I'm curious what the reaction is to Russians when their leaders keep talking about nuclear war, threatening nuclear war. We've heard it from Vladimir Putin. We've heard it from people on Russian TV about reducing enemies to ashes. We've heard it from Russian diplomats. An hour ago, Reuters reporting that Sergei Lavrov starts talking about nuclear weapons in World War III. Certainly, Russians understand if a nuclear war begins at Russia's hand, it will be Russia that will be obliterated from the face of the earth. And Russian leaders are talking about engaging in a war that would end up killing them. What is the reaction to this constant nuclear saber rattling that basically has Russian leaders saying, let us go in with this illegal invasion. Let us go in and seize Ukraine. And if it doesn't go the way we want it to go, then we're going to make sure the entire world faces nuclear annihilation. What do Russians think about that?
Well, look, Russia has had a policy for a while. They call it escalate to de-escalate. It's not entirely clear what that policy means, but in principle what it means that you make those kinds of threats, nuclear threats, in order to turn a conventional war in your favor. So the Russians have heard that before. Of course, and we've talked about it, Russians who are watching state television are getting a very reassuring picture of events. There are other Russians who are wondering and worrying about what might be going on behind the walls of the Kremlin and the state of mind of President Putin himself. Look, there is a lot of rhetoric in what Russians say, including President Putin. But he has chillingly said in a speech before, Russia doesn't need the world if there's no Russia.
All right, NBC's Keir Simmons in Moscow. Thank you so much. I'm wondering, Ambassador, what do you make of the constant nuclear saber rattling that we continue to get, again, from diplomats, from Vladimir Putin himself, from state TV, and an hour ago from Sergei Lavrov?
Joe, I think that this is performance. I think this is not a serious threat to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine.
Well, if it's a performance, doesn't it certainly indicate how badly this war is going for Putin?
Exactly. This war is going very badly for Russia. They can't believe that they're not already in Kyiv, in the capital.
What tells you that this is performance? When has he performed before? Okay, because every time he's tried to invade, whether it be Crimea or go back in the... He has done so.
By the way, this is a discussion that's being had in intelligence agencies.
I think we should believe him, Bill Taylor.
Hold on a second. Across the Western world, this is what the CIA and other intel agencies are trying to work through this debate right here.
You're exactly right. It is a debate, and there are two sides to this debate. On the one hand, there are people who say, this man is unhinged. We've heard this, and that's troubling. On the other hand, we have heard people tell me that he's not crazy. He doesn't abide by the same kind of costs and benefits calculations that we do, but he's still rational. And if he's rational, he's not going to commit suicide, which is what he would do.
Could he talk himself into thinking that, well, okay, we won't use the strategic nuclear weapons,
right,
the ICBMs, but tactical nuclear weapons.
Well,
we could use battlefield nuclear weapons, right, as if there were such, right, really such a thing.
Right, and the question is, Richard Haass, what are the generals around him thinking? What are other military leaders around him thinking that they didn't want to go to war? Their soldiers don't want to be in war in Ukraine. They have relatives in Ukraine. What are the oligarchs thinking? Oh, really? He's going to blow up my yacht. He's going to blow up my mistresses. He's going to blow up my $200 million flats in London. I mean, what are Russians thinking every time this guy, Sergei Lavrov, and let's never forget that, Sergei Lavrov, other diplomats start talking about nuclear war? They're talking about nuclear war. Is it performance art, or is this Putin on that?